Alrighty, everybody, we are back. I am going to be working on some guitar bracing for a bit. So I've got this rigged up on radius dish. This is my 30-foot radius dish that hooked up to my Total Vice system. I have this just clamped into the short rig, which I thought is very nice because I can actually rotate this all the way around. There's your Total Vice sticker. Anyway, so it's really cool. I can rotate this around. I really won't need it to rotate as far as that goes. But it is possible if I'm working away and I want a slightly different angle because I do have these two. I will be mounting this to a plate shortly, and so I can have that just freestanding to just drop it into the Total Vice system and be done. Anyway, so there is that, and going to start shaping these. Now, I have taken, everything's glued in. I have taken, this is to the height that I'll need. I'll need to take it just a tad lower. These are roughed height here. These need to go down quite a bit. This is to rough height, these two lower ones. This is to the height, ouch. I've got a piece of glue sticking out of there that's sharp. But I will round this over and bevel the edges. And so anyway, let's get started on this. So I do a scalloped bracing on this, and I definitely need to, right now it is like it does, I kind of doubt that's going to come through the microphone very well. It is starting to ring, but not ring especially well. It's very fast decay. As far as like you hit the note, you hear the note, and then it drops off fairly quickly. So we need to lengthen out that. We also need to open that up a little bit more. The ring is a little bit low, so it means it's just not a very high output, not very, through the microphone it's going to sound huge. But anyway, so we need to start shaving some of this down. So I am going to use a chisel and some planes on this. I do this by hand. There's plenty of other guys out there. There's tons of different methods on this. This is just how I do it, and I seem to have a good response with this. And so I haven't found a huge reason to change it. Now, I am using a bent chisel. This is a Hawk, excuse me. Hawk chisel. There it is. This is one I've just bought. You go right to his website or to StewMac or different places to sell this one. The bent chisel is nice because you can get in there and that handle comes when it sits flat on the desk. This handle comes off the desk, so you can actually like use it. I do also have a longer, slick type of chisel, very long handled, and this basically allows me to put this here and then have my hands up off of the workplace, so you can do some of this, shaping this way. And I do really like this Japanese chisel. It is very sharp, and you can get some very satisfying slivers, and mostly just the chisels I use just to get things close. And these I actually want to end before the kerfing. These four. Actually, these six, these two, I don't want to be there in the kerfing. Right now, they go all the way to the edge because I just glue them in long and then go from there. But I do want the X and this one to be tied into the ribs. So then, next thing, we're going to take this one, and these two right here are still just square, so they have plenty to get rid of. And there's different methods, and different ideas as far as like the shapes of these side braces, and there's going to be 100 different ways that people tell you that this is right, this is wrong, and all that other thing. So this is literally, as I just said, like this is the way I do it. Whether you think it's right or not, it doesn't really matter. This is just how I do it. And I'm always watching more stuff, reading more stuff about like what can make a difference in the tones of these things. I don't get to build that much, so I don't get to try that many different styles, which is okay. It's one of those deals where I would love to make a living as a builder, but it is it's feast and famine, and so it's very hard to make a living as a builder. Doing the occasional one is not bad, but you still like, it is really hard to make the same amount of money doing building as it is in repair. So that is something you do have to look at and, you know, decide. So doing them occasionally is fine, and the money is good for that, but it's not always going to be the case. So I'm going to rotate this around just a little bit so I can get you in a better perspective. I'm going to lock that back down. I was going to see if I can do it while it rotates, but it is just moving around too much. And I could clamp this top down, but it tends to be where if I do that, then it just tends to move around a lot. So I'm better off just having a good sharp chisel. Just use my arm as a dead rest, just like this. And there are guys, there's Brian Gallup has been doing a lot of stuff showing bracing, where he's got this rig where he ties the top, you know, all the way around the edge so that it's like it is when it's glued on. So it's this rig that it's like a mold that goes around the top, so he can tap on it, and he can hear the tones as he goes, which is something I would like to try. But for this build, I'm just going to do it the way I've traditionally done it, and it'll be, you know, it'll still sound great. Brian Gallup's deal is with that is making everything very repeatable. So you have that, you know, if you're looking for your tone of the guitar that you're building, you can do it every single time, which is a worthy goal, no doubt. And these we can pretty well take to nothing on the ends, even up there against the X brace. We really don't need a whole lot attaching to that X brace. Basically, the more connection you have here, the stiffer those side braces are going to become. And I do have to lock that. So I'm just taking these down to pretty much nothing so that we have some extra vibration. Also, the smaller body, we don't really need a whole lot of, you know, extra support on that. The narrower waist makes things, you know, tighter anyway. So we don't need a whole lot of help with that. Go. Okay. Now these are all plenty high still. I think I want to take those, I just want to measure them, kind of see where I'm at. Yeah, I need to take all those down. You only need at max 1/4 of an inch on these at that high spot. Okay, so I marked these down. I'll shave these two so you can see them. I just shaved these two down to height. Like I said, these I don't want more than 1/4 inch. They don't really need to be that high. So I'm going to take these right on down to 1/4 of an inch, and then feather that back out. I didn't realize they were quite so tall, but it's an easy thing to fix. And then feather that end back in, because I know where I want those to be. Just like that. Take the top off here, refeather that back down. And now I can go through and start re-tapering. I tapered those down and now I got to do a little bit more, but that's okay. It is easier to take wood off than to put it back on. And that might be, I'm kind of fighting the grain just a little bit right there. So we're actually going to break out the plane, get through that stubborn spot. Find a better angle for that plane. There we go. Now she's running smooth. Start to shave that down. That looks a lot better. That looks a little more like what I'm looking for. See, there's not a whole lot there. Now this plane I'm using is actually a modified plane. So this is one of the flat-bottomed, it's a flat-bottomed ibex plane that I made to have a slight curve. So let me get a ruler so you can see this. So you can see it's no longer flat. And so that allows me to put a slight curve in the tops of these braces. And I still do have one that's flat that I can use for that. But that's where, you know, I like to use this for that. I think when I'm using the plane, I can leave this to rotate. So now I'm going to do the same thing here. So let me pull this up so you kind of see what I'm doing here. So I'll show you. So if you look at the side profiles here, this is what I'm starting with. You know, once I knock down, there's my mark for the 1/4 inch. And here's what it's becoming. So tapering this down, I am going to go ahead and just take this all the way down to 0 here in a minute. But I'm just kind of getting the bulk of that out of the way. So you can see I've got a nice little, just a peak right there. These will also be tapered this way. I'm going to taper those up so there's just less mass there. But this is just lightening that up. It gives that edge just a little bit of flexibility, but it gives me kind of a nodal point right there. So to help spread that, basically we're taking, you know, the main vibration is this X going, you know, kind of doing this number, and this is going to help kind of spread that out to the sides into these areas. Now, I still haven't like fully agreed on how critical these are. I think you can get away with a lot less than a lot more of it, you know. So that's why I've been slowly over time been shaving these down more and more and more to where there's not a whole lot of brace here. But I think it does something. All right, so now I'm going to take this other one now. I'll show you that now so you can see the difference. So now you have that nice little uniform, very, very slim taper out there like that. Makes those edges a lot more flexible. And now we're going to do kind of a similar deal here, only this is going to have 2 peaks. There's going to be one there and one there. These are going to be kind of rounded. And I'll show you that. So we are going to take, first off, I'm going to take this and get rid of some big material here real quick. Whoop. Something. Oh, the cork popped. Well, I got to find a different block. So that just popped off there. Hang on one second. All right, got that taken care of. Just had to stick a different block underneath this one end of the vise on this. It had slipped. That was my own bad. Like I said, I am going to take they make a mounting plate for these where it's just the tube and it comes up to just a big flat plate. And I'm going to take one of those and just mount to the bottom of this and not have to worry about like clamping it down. And it'll be more stable. Well, it's still not as stable as I want. All right, got that sorted out. Then we're going to take and get back to filing some braces down. Now the reason I'm doing these first, just kind of roughing them in, I will fine-tune them more with a plane. I'm just getting these kind of out of the way, so when I work on this X right here, I don't have a big lump right here to deal with. Now, you could there are a lot of guys who will actually do a lot of this pre-shaping before they glue them in. I just have never, I've tried it a couple times and never, just had something not work quite right. So, there it is. So I tend not to do it that way. I just tend to glue them in as kind of a big square, A little tall, a little extra, and then I have room to work down into something that sounds like I think it should. Okay, so there's that initial taper done. I'm going to do some more tapering here. Get that roughed in. And I'm getting rid of a lot of weight right now, just hogging off all this extra height right here at the very ends. I'm gonna roll this over and just kind of get rid of some of that very end of the brace, because these I don't actually want even in the kerfing, so these all have to come down to nothing. And if I were a little smarter, I would have just cut them a little shorter before I glued them in. And I have tried it before, and somehow they always end up funky. I don't know. Something doesn't bond right, or I have this weird looking end of the brace that I can't quite feather out, and I don't know. It's a me problem, I know. Okay, so I have those pretty much zeroed, or taken all the way down to 0 here, just like that. And now we're going to actually make a curvature right here in between. So we're going to make those lower, because right now these are extremely rigid. Like, they have no flex in them at all. So we're actually going to take and just use the chisel just a little bit. Get some of this initial in. I'm going to come in from this end and go kind of to the middle. Not even quite to the middle, because it's not wanting to let me do that. Go down a little bit right there, and I do that on one side so that as I come in this side, if it blows a chip, you know, it's going to come down and hit a spot that's already loose and just come off, rather than, you know, running clear through the end of the brace. So now as I carve here, there we go. So it popped there instead of just like that. It runs out rather than tracing down the end of the split down to the end of the brace. Now I'm going to be real cautious. Do some little fine shavings. Come back from this other side. Meet back in the middle. Now that Beatles song is running through my head. Excuse me. Okay, so now let me show you the difference between the two. So here's before, here is after. I still want to take a little more height off this lower one. But you can see now I'm making that, I'm making an undulation shape. And so what that does is it starts to make this brace now all of a sudden starts to have a little bit of flex, because we're taking that height off. So you will get more out of a brace from height than you will with width. But you will be adding more mass with a wider brace. So this is how you can, you know, there's tons of different ways to look at this and, you know, decide how you want to brace your guitar. And so there's you know, as many ways as there are people to brace a guitar. Okay. That's looking a little better. That's a little more what I'm actually looking for. So let me show you that. So now we got here in the middle, here at the end, nice taper out. This is down to almost flush, and I'll just keep planing that until it comes back a little bit. I'll show you that as we get there. But there's a good rough in, basically. And I do need to take some more off of right here. I like having that little bit of a curve to give that a little more flex. Because we want this, you know, I want this top to have some good flexibility. Let's tap it, see where we are. And see, even right there, we're getting, it's a lot truer note. I don't think it's quite as loud right at the moment as it was before, which is typical because I'm adding, like, I've now made some places flexible and other ones are rigid, so it's you know, vibrating in an uneven way. And so that's where you kind of have to get these roughed in a little bit before you can really fine tune like what you want this top to be and to sound like. Because so much of the time, it's like you can't tap tune this till you get everything just a little bit closer. And then everything just starts to come into play. Pop that loose. So there's where you come in from one side and then the other, and that's what you get when you're done. And that's what we're looking for. So we just found out of the grain line I had popped loose and just popped that whole chunk out right out of the middle. And so you can kind of see there from the side profile, did break a little bit there, but that's okay, we're still high. So that will all still go away. So that's really the kind of like, right there is kind of where I stop with the chisel. You can go a little bit more if you're careful, but this plane is, you know, I have it set aggressive enough. That I can usually get down through it pretty quickly. Okay. Making a good old mess this morning. Means we're getting something done. Okay. Roughed in. You can see now we've got two lower braces, got that nice scoop in it. I want to take a little bit more off of those real quick. Get that in a little more of a line of what I'm actually thinking. I'm going to use the other side of the chisel so I can do a little more of a curve shape. And this side I honestly kind of just do with the chisel. I'll go back in with a sanding block and sandpaper and kind of reform that shape a little bit. But a plane right here, I can't go far enough between the top of that area right there and where, you know, I run into the X brace to make a plane worth it. That looks better. Okay, so there we go. That's a little better looking. Got those refined down quite a bit. Get all those sides. These still need to be tapered, but I'm going to wait and do that after I do a little more refinement on a few things. So next, I'm actually going to start now on the X. Get that more kind of in this mode. So you can see that's looking a lot more refined, a lot less boxy. than what it was. We also need to take and do the same thing with that. Okay, so now we're going to take right here. We're going to start at this. This is, I made a mark here at about 3 inches from the end. That's going to be my kind of my nodal point, and we're going to start getting rid of some material. And this doesn't take much, because I do need to leave a little bit of the, because I am going to tie it in, and there is a thickness at the end there that I do want to leave it. It's not hugely thick, but it is. There's an amount there. Okay, something like that. So you can see there. Carve that in just like that. So there's the before. There's the after. So you can see, brought that hole in, just tapered that down, lightens it up, but also starts to give me flexibility up into the plate. Oh yeah, that's got a lot better sounding going on thing. Okay, let's do that other side real quick. Like I said, this right here, I'm just hogging off material because it's got to go. And I'm going to flip this around so I can do a little bit of a curve down. There we go. So there's the after. Now, I actually do the same, like I do a scallop in the middle here. So I actually come from right here, and I'll come down and I'm going to scoop a lot of this out and then give this plate more flexibility. And this is one where there's a lot of controversy on that one, whether you leave this, more of a flat profile, just scallop the ends in really good. I prefer to have the scalloping in the middle. I have yet to have an issue with any of my guitars. That doesn't mean that maybe, down the road in 50 years there might be, but in 50 years that's not going to be my problem. I hate to say that, but I like the way my guitars sound. They sound great, and I yet to have seen, and some of the guitars are almost 20 years old, and they still don't have a problem. So. Okay. Oop. Starting to throw a crack. So we got to turn that around. We're going to hit that coming on the other side. There it is. Let's find the next one. There that one is. Okay. We can go just a little bit more, then we'll get the plane involved. Okay. Now. Now, I did have a comment when I was showing this stuff on Facebook, about oh, that's not very, it's the same pattern they've been using for 150 years, blah, blah, blah. And yes, they have been, and there's a reason. Like, it sounds a certain way. And actually not 150 years. It's only been around probably less, maybe about 100 years now. Before that it was all fan bracing, because they weren't using steel strings. Steel strings didn't really come into the marketplace until the 1850s. So, you can't have, that's when X bracing starts showing up. There was a few cases of X bracing coming in before that, but really not that much. Okay, so let me give you a little shot here. So there's the before, And there's the after. And you see I take quite a bit out of here, and that adds a lot. You know, now this plate actually has a little bit of flex right there. And we're actually gaining a lot of sound now. So now I'm going to do the same thing right here, and we're going to go from there. Oh, let's get the chisel. I like working with planes. The chisel definitely gets this job done a lot quicker. Okay. Okay, now we're going to take there we go. There we are. Okay, so there's that side roughed in. You can see that is all way lower profile. This top has lightened up, you know, not dramatically, but it has definitely lightened up. So let's go ahead and we're gonna actually take. See, I've already tapered these down. I got to plane these down a little bit more. Let's actually take and round this over and get these ends scalloped in, and that'll be the kind of the end of the roughing in, and then we can go for getting that all taken care of. So make a couple marks where I want those scallops to go to. Why does that look uneven? What did I do? I say something looks wrong. All right, so now we're going to take that same oh, that's a little tougher spruce. Come on. Then again, my chisel could be getting a little dull, but it's a lot wider spruce, so it's not gonna sail through as easy. And I like to take and get rid of the length here because I don't need to round this end. Okay, there's that. Yeah, it likes to cut that direction. Must be fighting the grain just a little bit somehow. This is a pretty good split of spruce, but there is definitely, this is an Alaskan spruce, Sitka, cut down in the 80s. And so it's old, it's very, very dry, been, cut for, 40 years? Something like that. So a very good spruce, very dry, but does have it's got kind of a toughness to it sometimes. Some of the pieces I've got a gentleman that I've helped out a lot, gave me some of these pieces that he bought back in the 80s, and they're really good sounding. Stuff rings like a bell. But like I said, every once in a while I get one piece that's just kind of tough. Hard to plane, hard to shape, but it still sounds great. Which also means that I can plane this stuff down and it still seems plenty rigid. So great for bracing. It's actually one of my favorite, bracing materials I've got. Okay, so now we're going to pull out, for this one, we're going to pull out my true flat ibex plane. So there's an ibex that's a little bit larger, so you can see. A little bit larger ibex plane, but this one I left as a true flat. You can kind of see the curve on that one, and this one is dead flat. So this is the one I always use to do these. Get this rounded over. And this brace, you don't have to, this brace is nothing more than support for the fretboard, for the end of the fretboard. That's what this brace does. It's got really nothing to do with tone. The whole upper end of this top is dead, tonally. It's an air chamber, like it's hollow, and so it does make a difference in that orientation. That's why, like, a cutaway will sound slightly different than a non-cutaway because you have lost some of the air chamber on the inside. The actual volume of air that it can play with is reduced. And so that is one of those things where I think almost all makers will agree that cutaway will make a difference in the tone, but there's not really a good way to say like how much of a difference, because there's so many other variables to think about other than just that cutaway volume reduction. Okay, something kind of like that. So I just took the plane, I just rounded that over. I will now sand it, and get that better. But there is your roughed out, upper brace. I will refine this down more, but this is really the height that's going to be for the most part. And then this is the taper. And so this is actually a different radius than the rest of this. This is a 50-foot radius, this is a 30. And that's to do the neck angle where I want it. So I have two different radiuses in that top, but you won't really ever notice it. It just flattens this area right here a little bit. So when that neck comes up here, it's not as steep. It's a little flatter. So it makes the action work a lot better down here. So there's the rosette, the sound hole, and there you go. There is the roughed in. So now we will get down to tap tuning. But I think, I'm going to call this today for when I will go more into this I'll video some more of this. I just need my elbow needs a break. I'm getting tennis elbow in here, and yeah, after doing that much, it's starting to get tender. So I'm going to take a break. I will come back in this tomorrow morning, and we'll finish this up. All right, now it's been a couple days, so now we're back, and I've done a little bit more as far as I feathered these out to 0 right here, and these two here, and these two here. So you can actually see the pencil line through there, and so now those will go right over the top. So right now what I'm going to start doing is thinning these out. So I'm actually going to take just a nice good flat chisel, and I'm actually just going to come in and start getting rid of some more weight. These finger braces are the easiest to do it with because you can just come in right in from the edge, lay that chisel down flat against that top, and just start shaving off, you know, a bevel on the side of these braces. And of course the split is nice in these, so it's just running right up the length of that. Okay, so now we just got rid of a bunch of weight off of those two. We're going to flip this around, do it on these two. Okay. Find the split on that one just a little bit. Okay. There's that. Now we're going to do the same thing to these two. And that's why I have such a long chisel. Trying to take too big a bite. Nibble that down and we'll get it. There we go. Okay. That gets rid of a lot of weight. Okay, so there's those. I'm actually going to take a little bit more off these. Not as easy now, but they definitely need a little bit more thinning. that. We're going to do this other side. It's not as much. But I'd still rather do it now. Okay. That looks a little better. Now I still need to go through and thickness these ends and feather those in. So I'm going to grab my little Dremel tool that I use that for, and I'll show you that. But anyway, so this is starting to ring. We're getting all really close now as far as like, now I'm just going to be fine tuning. I said I got to fine tune these ends now. They're my next thing. And so here's what I have set going. So this is just one of the little attachments you get with your Dremel. I found a little router bit that would fit inside there, and now this is a depth stop. So when I set it down, there's a gap between the blade and whatever surface you're on. And so now that is that's what I use to thickness the end of my braces. So it's always uniform. I'm gonna stick some earplugs in. We're gonna thin these down real quick, and I'll be right, well, you'll see it. So now, you can see now I've got this even thickness. That's the end of the brace. And now I just have to get rid of that little step. Okay, there's that. Okay. Now this is also going to make the top a little more flexible as we go through here. Okay. And we're getting close now, at least with this part. Now, the reason I do this at this point is just to kind of get a good, everything kind of down into place. Usually when I work on bracing, I basically work on like what is the most out, like what needs the most amount of work. And so, and this is also, like doing this particular step is just also a lot easier once you get rid of some of this excess material on these edges and stuff. So that's why I usually wait and do it at this point. And the reason I take and I use that little router to do that edge thicknessing is so that when I do the rib structure, I actually just take another Dremel with a flat bit and a little, a flat base, and just a small bit, spiral bit, and I can cut down into the rib structure that much on each one, and they're all the same. And so it's a lot less fitting of these braces in the end. So it just makes my life easier later, which is always what you want to do when you're doing this. Okay, so now that I've got rid of that, let's have a listen. Ooh, I like that. Sounding good. It's really starting to open up. So now I'm going to take and start sanding. So I'm going to grab a sanding block that's got a little bit of a curve to it, so I can do this and start sanding this out and see what it looks like when I'm done. So what I'm using is, it's actually a cork block. And I love these because you can just take them to the sander and shape them. So I have a flat, and we got a round, I cut a curved nose, got a square. So this is like one of my favorite little sanding blocks that I've made. Okay, well, I'm going to do some speed up on this so you guys don't have to sit here and watch all of this, because it's not that exciting to watch. Because right now I'm just going to be going through all the surfaces and just sanding them a little bit and getting them all, beautified up, if you will. And then we'll spend a little more time detailing whatever I've got going on here. So I will just speed this up for a second, and you'll see me done here in just a couple seconds. So now I'm looking at the flexibility of the X. We got some flex in it there. Got some flex in the lower. Fingers are just going to kind of flex along the X. Things nice and rigid up there. I do need to put an upper popsicle brace up here, just for structural reasons. And I need to sand a little bit more right there. Because you want it pretty. You always want your stuff pretty on the inside as well as the outside. All right, we're going to tap tune this again. Okay, so we're doing pretty good. I like that sound. I need to glue a little reinforcement over this X transition right there. And this top is pretty well done. Like I said, I do got to glue a little thin one right here. The upper, a lot of people call it the popsicle brace. So I still have to glue that in, and I will do that, but that really doesn't do anything as far as tonal good goes. But as far as bracing, that's kind of what I usually do. That's the kind of profile we're looking for. Let me get behind the camera so I can see what you're seeing. You know, I'm seeing, I got to sand that a little bit more, but that's your general shape that I do. And I kind of learned this was kind of modified out of the Ken Everett. This is kind of his style of bracing, and I've taken it, you know, done probably a little bit different. I think he usually just leaves his square. And this is probably a little more depth in the scalloping than most. But this is kind of the way, like, all the guitars I've built, I've really liked the sound. I've never had any problem with bellying. And so this is kind of the general way that I've always done this. Now, there's tons of other ways that people do this. And everybody's got their own method. Everybody's got their own idea of it. And they're all going to do a slightly different sound. This is the kind of the sound I like. These tend to be very even and very responsive. So it's not really like, you know, you have a real heavy bass or anything like that. They tend to be kind of good, like finger style guitars. That's just kind of the way they are. They sound great strumming. But you can overplay them if you strum too hard. But I said that's kind of the sound I like. So there we are. So anyway, that's how we do, at least that's how I do bracing. Now this, like I said, this is an OM model. This one is for a customer that's been waiting a very long time for it. And this is kind of the general. So what I'm listening for as far as when I tap this, and it's probably not going to come through very well. This now has a nice hit. It has a nice fundamental note, and then it has a nice kind of taper down reseed. Nice sustain, but a nice taper down. You do have some guys that want that like lift back up as it degrades. I've found that that's never been that helpful, but that's just my own personal opinion. There's a million ways to do this. Everybody's got their own idea of what this should be. Like I said, there's a couple guys now coming out where they take microphones, they're tap tuning all of this stuff, making one side, making everything completely even, and that's great. I have no idea how to do that. I don't have the equipment for that right now. Is it something I'll look at eventually? Yes, it will. I just don't build enough to invest that much money into it, especially for a guitar that, the way I build it, I get a tone that I'm looking for. If I were just a builder, I would definitely be running down that road trying to make the most consistent guitar. And, at this point, yes, that's a factor, but I don't build, I only build one guitar, one instrument a year at that right now. And so it's like I can't justify, I don't have the time because of the repairs to dive deep into that, if that makes sense. So some of you guys that just want to be builders, definitely something you should look at, because it's a good way to get a very repeatable guitar if you're going to be building hundreds of these things. For me, I've just found that I've built 50-something guitars, which isn't a lot. I'll say it. I do much more repair than I do building. This tends to get me a tone that's fairly repeatable for me because I'm listening for a particular tone and a particular resonance. So once it has that, then I'm really close. Now I do have some of them, or each one is just slightly different, and that's okay. They still sound great. They're just all slightly different, and that's everybody has a different purpose on how they want to build guitars and how they want these guitars to be built. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. So that is how I shape the bracing on a acoustic guitar top. I'll be doing the back here probably tomorrow, and then I'll glue that I'll start gluing this together and actually have a box. So anyway, if you guys want, you can stay tuned. I will be gluing this upper in here. I'm not going to video that because like I said, I usually do this and then I glue that in, because this whole upper bout, when you glue it onto the body, is pretty dead. So this doesn't really make any difference as far as the way that it resonates. Anyway, y'all have fun and be kind to everybody.